Okay, Mr. Mann.
Right away.
3 minutes, sure. And we don't engage back and forth because it's public comment, it's not agendized item. We're not being rude, but it's listen mode.
And state your name for the record. Okay, I'm sure you guys know who I am. I'm Anthony Mann. I'm here today to recognize some people for some stuff that's been completed. First, I'd like to recognize Mr. King. The day after the social media disaster, the first person I saw in the parking lot was the superintendent of our schools. It was very reassuring as a parent, also as a student for my daughter, to see the superintendent of schools there. I appreciate you for that. Also going to the games, and not only going to the games, but after the game, stopping and taking the time to talk to the girls. They actually know who their superintendent is. It was very refreshing. Made a big impression on them.
That's what we're here for.
Well, they're not quite used to it, so I appreciate you for that. The other thing is, Mike Corona, he did some cleanup at the front of the school for us. I'd like to recognize him. I think we just passed that to the board members. There was some stuff that was left over from phase 2 that I had brought up in April. And it took Mike about 4 days to finally get all that work done in front of the high school. That was all left over from the second phase of construction. He realized that it was a safety issue. We have people ride horses. So he took it upon himself to take it and get rid of it right away. He's also making a big headway on the retention basins. If you notice, those are all getting cleaned out before winter comes. It's nice to see some stuff finally getting done. And thank the board for keeping Mike on board. I think you might have to keep him a little longer.
Are you guys related?
No?
All right, so
We're just old school. And I have all the faith in the world that they'll complete the rest of the issues that we still have at the high school. There's still some pending, and I'm sure Mike will get to them in a timely manner.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mann,
Yeah.
we always hear when things don't go right. It's kind of nice once in a while to hear when things do.
Well, that's only fair.
Yep. Yeah, I know, doesn't mean it happens, thank you. There's no other public comment? Mr. Sell, our AATA representative, we're on agenda item 8.1.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Melissa Trussell, and I'm the ADA Union President. I would also like to extend a little bit of gratitude out to Mr. King. We want to thank you for inviting us and reaching out to us. We had lunch with Mr. King this week where we are trying to build a solid relationship, and we just wanted to say thank you for that. We don't have a presentation for you all this evening, but next time we will. And other than that, thank you again for the time that we spent with you. We look forward to building that relationship. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sell.
Thank you, not this time, thank you.
Loker, all right, 8.3.
So recently we had the Fall Carnival, and we had an amazing turnout for that. A lot of different booths, a lot of different events, and we had a higher participation in students actually going to the event and people actually showing up to the event than the past years. So it's getting better and better every year. And another thing that went on is that the students went ahead and took the PSAT. That would be some of the sophomores and some of the juniors, and about 30 students did. And I just want to go ahead and state that the PSATs are extremely helpful for when you are going to be taking the SATs your late junior year or your early senior year.
When was the PSAT taken?
No, I do not recall.
I have a kid who's supposed to have taken it. Was that?
2 weeks ago.
You see how much she talks to me. She talks to her mother. Okay. Or your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Loker.
And also on the 13th, we had more, and which more than half the school actually showed up, so that was great. And I ended up going, like, as a whole, most of the people ended up going in and just playing neon, so I was a little out, but that's some personal stuff. Cal Lutheran showed up at the 17th to go ahead and give information about Cal Lu and how to apply and what they're looking for. And also we had the CSU application night on the 18th where the council went ahead and helped people go ahead and apply to CSU. And the counselors went around on the 9th and 11th regarding students and social media and their safe choices, and which is a little bit of a controversial topic. And I'm not sure if students would go ahead and listen to counseling and such, but it's great that the message is actually getting out there and information is being given just in case students don't already know the dangers of social media, especially to your own psyche. Anyway, and upcoming events, which is going to be very important, is going to be the FAFSA after school meeting, which is going to be taking November 1st. And that's going to be after school, the counselors. And I believe that is it.
Thank you very much, Larry. Thank you. Item 8.4, new constructions. Mr. King?
Couple of things. We're still looking into the purchase of a new marquee for Vasquez High School. Just want to make the board aware of that. We do have the Mustang mascot. We are just working on the stand piece, which needs to have DSA approval, but again, just want to make the board aware of that piece. And one piece for the local media, there was a misprint. I just want to clarify that the football field is not part of phase 3 construction, it's part of phase 4, but I shared a lot of information last go around, so totally can understand the miscommunication, but wanted to just clarify so that folks wouldn't hear it as part of phase 3.
Since I've been here longer than you.
Yeah, sure.
There's no imminent plans for phase 4. I mean, our state money
Thank
runs
you.
out with phase 3. So our football field, that's our football field. Now, phase 3 includes bathroom,
Yes.
so it won't be porta potties anymore, but I just, since you coined phase 4, and phase 4 isn't really in the vernacular because there's no money for it, I just want to get that out
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah.
It's important clarification. I'm not sure if Mr. Mann saw my notes as I was preparing for tonight's board meeting. It seems like you've read these, but I would like to introduce this evening our interim facilities director who's been helping us out quite a bit, Mr. Mike Arona, if you don't mind standing up. At our last board meeting, I commented on Proposition 39, damage control from the flood, and most importantly, the positive impact that Mr. Arona has had on our facilities project. He's worked closely with TDM and myself to expedite the process in correcting the DSA issues. I want to thank and commend the board itself for your trust, allowing me the flexibility to assess, evaluate, and make the necessary changes to ensure that we have the best chance to complete our facilities projects in a timely manner. So thank you for that. Since our last board meeting, Mr. Rona and Executive Cabinet have walked the Atkins site several times. I held 2 facilities meetings and reallocated personnel sources so that we have the best possibility of completing these projects on time and within budget. Mr. Rona will remain here at the board meeting through agenda item 10.2 in order to further clarify and respond to questions that the board may have in regards to a facilities piece regarding some septic tanks. Again, just thank you again, Mr. Rona, for all of your service. It's been tremendous to have you on board. And Mr. Mann, we look forward to his continued service. That's it for 8.4.
Okay, how about 8.5?
Okay. I'd like to thank Nicole Chun. She turned me on to a book that I just recommend to our administrators, but to anybody interested in leadership, and that's a book called Lead Like a Pirate. She gave me that book as a gift, and the first chapter, which I only just completed, is about what you're passionate about, to find your passion. In self-reflection, as I was reading the book, my passions are always about student success. And that's not just academic success, but the whole child, emotional, mental, physical success. And not every child learns on the same day or in the same way, and realizing that as educators is extremely important and something I'm extremely passionate about. Along with that passion also, I kind of identified teachers who believe in their students, teachers who are committed to making all students feel successful, including students that often get written off by peers, educators, and unfortunately sometimes even their parents. And so we have to be there for all of our students, and that's always my goal. I want to thank Meadowlark Elementary School. I was there Wednesday, October 18th for what I've been referring to, Board, as our Stay Gold moments. And so we spent an hour together and talked about our Stay Gold moments. And I have to say that it is a very thoughtful, insightful, and humorous staff. So we had a good time at Meadowlark, and I want to thank Meadowlark for their continued commitment to our students, and to Ms. Coleman for hosting that event and having me there, and for your continued work in leading that site. So thank you for that. Lynn David has just been tremendous in assisting us, and Dr. Budraj's, we wish him well on his taking care of some medical needs, but in his absence, I really want to thank Ms. David for stepping up. She has a school to run, and we made some backup plans for that. And I want to recognize and thank our counselor, Mr. Rooney, for helping out with that as a teacher in charge, so to speak. And you've just been tremendous in the past week in all of your efforts. And I know it's been late nights and early mornings and texting at all hours and so on. So thank you so much. And I know the board very much appreciates your efforts as well. So thank you for that. I want to recognize Amanda Fisher for stepping in and assisting in several areas over the course of the past year, as I understand it, but firsthand, certainly during my tremendous, my transition, she's been a tremendous asset to me, and I appreciate all of your efforts and getting me up to speed on charter schools, and I have a long ways to go with our charter school self-education piece, but thank you for all of your efforts as well, and very much appreciated. Ada, and you say Ada, I say Ada, tomato, tomato. But I want to recognize your leadership as well as CSEA's leadership for communicating, building trust so early in our relationship. That's so important. I always say people first, relationships first, and everything else is second, because we have to care about each other, care about our students, and we had a long discussion about that at lunch. There were some thoughts I shared, but those other pieces come second to me in my philosophy. It's always people first. Board, just again, thank you for your continued trust and commitment to the Acton-AADUSD community and all of your support. Very much appreciated. And in closing, I'd like to invite you. I think you have a formal invite either coming or you already received it. But for this Monday, October 30th, is a professional development day for our teachers. And I'll be barbecuing at that event. And thank you, huge thank you to Yolanda and our district office staff. So we want to serve our teachers and our administrators, and we're going to be hosting that. You are welcome to stop by any time during the day or for lunch here at the high school, and we'll be serving at the high school. And that's where the staff development is taking place as well. Lunch is at 11:30. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to board member comments. We'll start with Mr. Fosgrove.
Mr. Mann, thank you for showing up here tonight. Thank you for your positive comments towards staff, association representatives, association representatives, association representatives, association representatives. Thank you for being here consistently.
That's out of your playbook.
Like that? For both areas, we can't help it. Mr. Arona, thank you for the work you and your staff are doing. I've invited someone to our board meeting. They were actually silly enough to come. I would like to introduce Kelly Jensen. Kelly is a local resident. She is a longtime school education professional, and she currently serves as the curriculum director for the Palmdale School District. So thank you for coming and observing our meeting. the high school, why are we driving up the driveway the wrong way? Can someone explain that to me?
I can explain it, but I'll do it in my,
Okay, so I have an explanation. It's called, I'm being inconsiderate. And listen, guys, when Fallsgraf says you're being inconsiderate, you're getting way out there in the weeds. So,
he's right.
it shows a complete lack of civility. I've got somebody that could be up on top, directing people, getting them out, making sure everyone's safe. Now we've got them downstairs. I don't know who's up there, but whoever's on that site, please come together and get this stopped. Do I need to call State Patrol or somebody to write tickets? I mean, we can get some local economy boost, but please, don't pass people that are sitting there and taking their turn and dumping kids off in the parking lot, however you're doing this.
Don't jump the
This
line.
needs to stop. It just needs to stop. I even know a double yellow line, and I grew up in Oklahoma, so come on. On a more positive note, I thank you for the support of the kids that are trying to go to the National Honor Society and becoming joined in that. New kids coming into the district, they may not know that, so I so much, Loker, this is directed at you and the fellow students. Kendra's coming into returning to Vasquez, and there's a lot of things she don't know, so I very much appreciate patience and the National Honor Society and becoming part of that and being mentored on how that works in this group over here is very good. I understand that the popcorn sales is going to be very competitive, almost like selling Girl Scout cookies. So I'm going to lay dibs on that we can sell popcorn. Your class of 18 can sell popcorn in here. And we won't have to wait till 30 minutes after the board meeting to start those sales, so pass that back along. What else do I have here? I've got some stuff on some items there, so that's it, thank you.
Mr. Layton?
Nothing this evening, Mr. Porter.
I want to start out by thanking the kids that came out to this school the day after we had this threat about 3 Thursdays ago. The following day, I believe we lost close to 30% of our attendance, which, you know, as you know, were paid by students, you know, and that was a big hit for the school, not only to the morale, but financially also. So after this incident that we recently had with the social media posting about a gun and all that, I want to commend the students that actually showed up. I have no problem with the ones that didn't, but I think it was a good sign of unity on their part to do that. So thank you to those kids. Thank you, Loker, for being there. And I want to also, in that regard, say, you know, a lot of times in the board, in closed session, open session, and, you know, through the different facets in the community, what we try to do is influence each other's opinion. I don't think that that's really beneficial. It's good to have good discussion and all that, but when someone's trying to influence your opinion is when they kind of break down your reasoning and say, you know, kind of, as opposed to having a healthy conversation about something, they you know, take more of a personal attack or something and try to associate motives to why you make a certain decision. And I just want to say, as board members, you know, the way this works is we're a part of the systems of checks and balances for the government, where they don't want Mr. King to be basically the king of the district, right? They want him to have some oversight, and citizen oversight, elected citizen oversight. And so to explain my motive for the way I vote on such issues when they come to discipline, and I have historically been pretty conservative in this regard, is that to me what comes down first and foremost is the safety of the student body. And that's the scope through which I look at these issues. The children deserve a safe environment to come to school in. A lot of kids didn't feel safe after this, so that's what's the most important to me. Next, I want to thank Mr. King. You've really risen to the occasion. I really feel that we not only hired a person with great capabilities and great critical thinking, great analytical point of view of things, but also someone with a very strong moral compass. So thank you very much for being a part of the team. It's been great so far, and I feel very good about the decision that we made. And you know, we spent all summer on this as a board. We came here, had many meetings, and I think that it was time well spent.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I want to thank Lynn David for rising to the occasion. In the past, she's really been helpful with our budget in regard to the LCFF and the LCAP, and I think it's very nice of you to rise to the occasion. I also want to thank each and every site administrator from Ty to Cassandra, and I also want to thank Amanda for everyone's kind of like, you know, really been a great team player with a new superintendent and the challenges we have right now, and our CFO being on leave and not having an assistant superintendent. So I really want to thank you guys. Before I get into the driving situation, I want to explain what Ken was going on about a little bit there, which I agree with him. I want to say that we have a very, you know, 5.5 years ago we were broke, and the money that we're supposed to get quarterly or every month from the government, many times they were deferred and we weren't getting that money. We're in a complete different situation now. We have ample savings, and a lot of those savings are restricted funds that, you know, we can't just do what we want with them, for lack of a, you know, better term. But I for one, I'm committed to phase 4. That's what I want to say. I would like to see us have a better football field. I would like us to explore the possibilities of, if possible, spending some of our reserves and trying to go past phase 3 and go into phase 4. And then the final thing is on this driving issue. The same way we did this year as a whole board, and we came and had a lot of meetings in order to hire a new superintendent. Mark Distaso and myself, years back, we would come in probably every couple of weeks and go over 600, 700 pages of plans and make sure that the construction of the high school had the proper oversight, in addition to Dr. Woodard, our superintendent at the time, and in addition to our architect, and also our expediter, Mr. Vose. I feel that somehow in the process of all that, I will speak for myself, not for Mark, I feel that that we kind of dropped the ball somehow on one particular spot, and that was the driveway for the high school, okay? And I don't know how we missed that, but to me it's kind of embarrassing, because we in effect reduced the access by 3/4, by 75%. The way it used to be, you had 2 double lanes going up, 2 double lanes coming down, you know, 2 double lanes same direction. Someone could go faster or slower. You got up to 4 lanes on one side, 2 lanes on each side. So you had just, you know, it's the difference between a cramped apartment or a condo or the ranches that we have out here. We had an amazing amount of elbow room. People just kind of came and went. They had so many options that there was no problem. Now what we have is 1 lane coming up and 1 lane going down. The only access we have to the high school is a single lane with a double yellow next to it, and on the other side, the exit lane. What happens is very quickly, as we're coming up to pick up our kids, right, you're going up the lane up towards the high school, and it backs up pretty quickly because there's a designated spot by the flag for the kids to be picked up. I would say maybe 25 cars makes it back up into the actual driveway going up the hill. So you're kind of like stuck there, and as you're stuck there, you know, with 20, 30 other cars, you're kind of like waiting there, and you will see people that will come and go on the opposite end. Remember, 1 lane going up. They will go on this lane on the left side now. We only have 2 lanes going up. And they'll be like, oh, no one's coming down at the top. These people are stuck in line. Let me fly up there past all these cars, go to the parking lot, you know, pretend that I'm going to park in the parking lot, have my kids complicit in this process, to meet me in the parking lot as opposed to at the designated spot, which is a horrible lesson to teach kids. You know, their parents teaching them how to jump the line, basically. Meet me in the parking lot, right? And these are sophomores and freshmen mostly, maybe some juniors, because most seniors are driving. You know, and many times you're at the bottom, I'm there at 2:35, 2:40 to pick up my kid, or my wife is, and you will see people flying up at 35, 40 to make it to the top, and you're sitting there still 5 minutes later, and they're coming down, they already got their kid. So that means their kid went to the parking lot, met them, and went down. What I think will be a good solution is simple presence of a district employee, and I don't really want to hear this thing that we don't have anybody to do that. You know, we have ground supervisors, we have maintenance folks, you know, it could be Ernesto, it could be anybody. Between 2:35 and 2:45, until we fix this thing, just have somebody at the bottom, the mere presence of them with a, you know, orange vest and a sign will keep, people are embarrassed of jumping the line, they won't do it. If they see, if someone just right there to be there with a sign, they won't do that. So someone at the bottom, let's either hire somebody, and let's just tell the kids and the parents on a you know, these recordings that go out, if you tell the kids at the school, they know who they are, because they can't be picked up at a designated spot. This practice involves kids going into the parking lot and meeting their parents. Okay, they can't cut in line and go to the designated spot. Once you say this at the high school, that kids don't do this, they'll know who you're talking about. So, you know, let's make an announcement. Let's have Ty say something. I'm kind of disappointed, you know, I've been talking about this for a while. I have a picture of probably 50 cars doing this. Deputy Short is on this, and so is the CHP. These people are going to get a call, you know, and it's very dangerous. The other day, there was a near-miss accident where a truck going up forced somebody into the dirt. And something bad is going to happen, because this is happening when the same time that the kids are walking down the driveway. So this is one of the most important things at the school right now in regard to safety. We've got to get on top of this. Somebody at the bottom, please, to keep them from doing that. And we have to redesign this driveway. We just did a really stupid thing with the way we designed it. And I'll take my responsibility. I will claim whatever my involvement was, but you know, it was me, Mr. Distaso, the architect, Mr. Bose, and Dr. Woodard. So we all missed this. It didn't make any. It wasn't a red flag to us that we're reducing the flow into the school by 75%.
We will take care of it starting tomorrow, and thank you for bringing it to my attention.
And this should be a part of phase 3, that we fix this.
That piece, but for tomorrow, and moving forward, we'll take care of that piece as far as the presence and.
I'm not making it, Mr. President, I'm not making it part of phase 3, I'm just saying it should be. So we should talk about it, and I don't see anything more. Something bad's going to happen with these kids walking down on their phones and people flying up the wrong side to make it to the top before somebody comes down.
We'll take care of it.
So we gotta have someone at the bottom to stop this for right now. So emergency measures to directly address it on the spot right now, and eventually some kind of a remedy to fix it. You know?
I think he's got the action. In fact, if you don't mind, on the future agenda items, we'll agendize it. Certainly, I don't want to dictate the solution. Some schools, we've gotten as good as we can get at. You know, we're not going to make every traffic problem go away in every school, because we all know all schools have it. Having said that, whether it's putting additional staffing for that short duration down at the bottom of the hill to enforce good behavior, which doesn't, it solves the problem of the line jumping and of the potential head-ons, but it doesn't keep traffic from backing up on
Very good.
on Escondido. One might consider, so you guys can study,
I know what
bring
you're gonna say.
recommendation, taking that additional staff person and opening the gates so that the other drop-off could be used, as long as there's an adult there, so the kids aren't going off in every different direction. And then they could potentially walk down a little alleyway, it's got chain link on both sides, to the main entrance.
Here's
And
a
that would open
problem.
up potentially another.
That's a very good suggestion. You're talking about the Red Rover, right?
Yes.
Okay, here's the problem with that, and I brought that up and I talked to Mark about it. The problem is once we've secured vehicular access for Escondido, our vehicular access for this purpose from Red Rover was vacated. So yeah, you can physically go up there, and some parents do that. I'm happier with parents that do that as opposed to go up the wrong side. We currently do not have vehicular access for this purpose at Red Rover, so we need to talk to Jim Bose.
So I don't wanna design.
That's what Jim
I'm
said.
surprised at that. We use it all the time.
I know, for buses and all that.
It's our property, it's our road. It just seems, I suspect, I've not heard that element, we'll leave it to you guys, but I suspect it's just a matter of providing supervision, and then it's another drop-off area, somebody's gotta open gates, close gates, provide
It was
supervision.
a DSA thing.
Well, so you've got it. I mean,
We'll take care of it.
we're concerned about the safety issue, and if there's anything we can do to remediate that.
Open the Red Rover,
All
that's
right.
a very good
I see
suggestion, but, yeah.
Okay. So for myself, I'll just want to know two things very, very briefly, or one thing very briefly is to amplify on Mr. King and Mr. Porter's recognition of cabinet members staffing up. This is a small district, so we've got 4 principals and I think 4 other cabinets, superintendent, CFO, an assistant that's not now with us, assistant superintendent, a maintenance officer, and maybe Amanda's role. So there's like
Dean,
5 here.
yeah.
When we have three openings right now, of those 5. And, or something close to 5. And I appreciate the fact very much that in such a short-staffed situation, that all of you and the principals coming up to do their part are helping us through this, and we hope to remedy that situation. But right now, there's no maintenance person, thank you, Mr. Romo, but you're part-time, there's no assistant superintendent, and the CFO is out on medical. And it's a small staff to begin with. So we're not a big district, we don't have many benches deep, and so when people go out, you know, it all falls apart unless people step up, so thank you. And we'll come back to this. So that's it for my board member comment, given that, come on up. This is Miss Denise Wessel,
Yeah,
more or less 3 minutes.
won't take that long.
Okay.
My name is Denise Wessel, good evening. Regarding the parking situation, do you not, as parents, want us to park in the parking lot? My son takes forever, do you know Thomas Wessel? So I do not want to wait in line, because then I'm making other cars behind me gonna wait longer than they want to anyway.
Well, we probably don't want you crossing the double yellow.
No, she's parking before.
I parked before.
Of course we want you to have
Thank you. Don't
Okay.
cross the
No,
double
you're not
yellow.
going to, I've never seen you on the
Please
double
get
yellow.
everyone else to do what they're doing.
Do as I say, not as I do, correct?
Yeah, you're Thomas's
So,
mom, right?
yes, I
Yeah, I
am.
know your cars, I know your 2 cars.
Yeah.
I've never seen you do that.
No,
Yeah.
no, because.
No, you're doing the right thing.
So, but I'm just saying, for their safety, do you want us now to?
No, you're doing the
park?
right thing. What I'm talking about is
The lane jump.
going the
Yeah,
lane
I
jumping on the
understand.
wrong side, and here's your kids that are simply being picked up at the designated spot, being told to go meet you in the parking lot where I ditched the line. And you're not doing anything like that.
Yeah.
You have the right to park in the parking lot and wait for your kid, absolutely. You're doing it correctly.
Now, I do have to say though, a lot of people, because they drop them off at the flagpole, there can be 2 lanes, and they choose not to. So that's why a lot of times it backs up, because people just like, oh, I'll wait here because that's where my kid, I mean, come on, the parking lot's not that big. They know if they go up
I
a
agree
bit,
with you.
they look.
The reason they stopped that is Ty stopped that because there was a kid that almost got hit by the right side.
I'm sorry, Mr. Porter, just remind, let's just listen, we'll resolve, we'll take care of it, and let's just listen for
Yeah.
public
But
comment.
I just think that, you know, common courtesy, you know, you gotta only go 5 miles an hour unless, go slow, but make it double. And wide enough, because nobody's coming the other way, wide enough where if a student is picked up, they're able to, you know, move farther and then go down and, you know, so it's not backing up the line.
Denise, I'll make an exception, and I'll make a comment on this. I'm very sorry, we really messed up. We couldn't have, if we got paid, we couldn't have done a worse job. It's just insane. The high school is amazing, the gym's amazing, we did so much right, okay? But as far as the access, we really messed it up. So I'm gonna take
That's your
steps to try and fix it. No, it's just the facts.
But let me just remind them,
Just thanks.
let's try not to have discourse. or
Yeah,
just
okay.
public
Thank
comment.
I think the public is owed an apology for the situation that's there. I have the right to do that.
I think
We're moving on, your board
maybe-
member comments are over.
Okay, I just think
Thank you.
maybe if a phone call is done to all the parents, maybe they're like, oh, okay,
I'm the one jumping the line.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Getting to school. It's tough everywhere.
It is.
Here's gonna look into a solution. Item 9.0, it's recommended the following consent agenda items be approved: the minutes of the board meeting October 12th, 2017, and the warrant register. Those are numbers 9.1 and 9.2.
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ed. Second, anyone? I'll second. Is there any discussion? None. Call the question?
Aye.
Aye. That's a
4-0.
4-0.
If I may, Mr. Fox, I have some stuff I'm going to need to do. May I exit?
Of course.
Anytime you want after your board, your student comments, anytime you want.
We appreciate the fact we stay most all the whole meeting.
Yeah, this is just those kind of nights.
Yep.
Sorry.
You're good.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Item 40.
10.1. Under business and financial, it's an action item. Agreement for services, Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Ruud, and Romo. It's recommended the board approve the agreement for services as mentioned, moved by Ken
I'll
Fosgrove.
happily second.
A little bit of discussion. I'm actually going to introduce Ms. Kathy Fields and Mr. Warren Kinsler and ask them to step up and introduce themselves a little bit as well, but just a brief introduction. Mr. Kinsler is recognized as an expert on the Brown Act with additional expertise in the Public Records Act, conflict of interest laws, shared governance, accreditation, election law, and school and community college human resources matters. Mr. Kinsler represents districts on numerous issues arising out of collective bargaining processes, including contract interpretation, grievances, and arbitration hearings. My experience personally with Mr. Kinsler up to tonight has been over the phone for advice on board governance, which has been exceptional in very difficult situations and challenging situations. And so I cherish that advice and appreciate it very much, and look forward to thoughts you can share beyond that. I have more experience with Ms. Kathy Fields, who's here this evening, going back 8 years to my introduction into the world of personnel services. And so we've maintained a professional relationship in the past 8 years where she's provided me with a tremendous amount of supports, both at the bargaining table, on disciplinary matters, on grievance issues, on a variety of matters involving students, parents, and staff. Mostly employee-related matters. So I welcome both of you. Thank you for both being here this evening. And I'm not sure at this point if the board, would you like to take a few minutes to talk about the law firm perhaps? I don't know if the board would like to entertain that.
You're welcome to. Please, why?
Thank you for that nice introduction. As Mr. King said, I've known him for about 8 years. He had come from being a principal to director of personnel services, and had obviously worked with employees, but was not familiar with all the issues involved in personnel services. And it was a great pleasure working with him all that time at 2 different districts. And I'm very pleased to be here and look forward to working with you again here in Acton, AADUSD. I've worked with school districts my entire career as a lawyer. That's all I've done. Actually, between us, Mr. Kinsler and I have about 50 years of legal experience representing educational institutions. I will let you figure out the distribution of 50 years. But we really appreciate you having us here this evening and getting to see your facility and meet Yolanda, who I know I will be working with quite a bit. We're happy to take some questions as well. I'll let my colleague talk a little bit about the firm.
Can you state your name for a record? That's important.
Absolutely, it's Kathy, C-A-T-H-I-E, Fields.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good evening, good to be here. I'm Warren Kinsler. I'm a partner in Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Ruud, and Romo. I know it's a mouthful. few words about myself. I started my career at San Diego Unified as the Deputy General Counsel, went up to LA Community College District as the Associate General Counsel and then General Counsel. And then in 1990, I joined Atkinson Andelson. I was attorney number 21. We're now about 170 attorneys statewide, a good portion of whom devote themselves to education law related issues, whether it's construction, special ed, personnel, general counsel type work, all of those sorts of things. And so when you contract with us, you get more than Kathy and I. You get a lot of our resources, background. And we really pride ourselves on responsiveness to clients and really working with our clients to find solutions and be part of a team. Many of our clients have been with the firm since its inception. There aren't many firms that have been around 37 years. But we established long-standing relationships, and we cherish those. Our clients become friends to varying degrees, and we like the work that we do. Doing education law is different than a lot of other areas of law, and it is truly a calling for many of us. So with that, I welcome any questions you have about us and what we can provide.
I have some questions for the superintendent.
Sure.
But he might have, are the rates in the contract, have you checked them for reasonableness and?
We have, and the rates are very comparable with the rate schedule that you're familiar with another law firm, and so it's very comparable.
And from my review, the document, although I'm not an attorney, there's two there, but in theory. It looks like, although the duration of the agreement is through September of next year, there's no penalty for any mutual termination of it.
Correct.
That's how I read it.
Correct.
Thank you.
And it's an open-ended contract, so if I decide to just not call or contact, that will be fine.
Birth by the hour.
Correct.
Do you have any questions?
A comment, as a public sector servant myself, I believe in testing the market, because when we don't have variety in the market, we become complacent and that type of thing. So Superintendent King, I'm glad you're introducing some competition into our market. I know that this isn't a plumbing RFP, but an RFQ is a good thing. I'm glad you're here. I did look at your rates. They're very competitive, thank you. I like excellence in service. I like the diversity that your firm offers. Your experience is refreshing. I'm noticing that some firms tend to lock on to certain aspects of education and head down the lucrative path, and for some of those, I think that there might be a dead end there. So welcome. I respect the superintendent's choice, and I'm glad that there's some legal diversity in the district. Thank you. That's it for me.
Like Ken, I respect the superintendent's choice as well, and we look forward to having you, if voted so, as a part of the team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry, anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. Call the question.
Aye.
Aye. Welcome aboard. Thank you.
We have our own lawyer on the board, by the way, so.
You see, I told you earlier, I have to remind you, I'm not here as a lawyer, I'm a member of the community, I'm a board member.
Item 10.2, VHS Phase 3 demolition and removal of 3 underground holding tanks for $10,300. It's recommended the board approve the contract with JT Engineering for the demolition and removal of 3 underground holding tanks in the amount of $10,300. This is on early work as part of Phase 3.
Moved.
Second, someone? I'll second it. Mr. King?
Sure, let me share a little bit of background, and if you have questions, I may defer to Mr. Rona on behalf of myself. So the prior team appeared to be unaware that there was 3 tanks that existed in the vicinity of Phase 3 construction at Vasquez High School. Therefore, the removal of these was not submitted to DSA in the original plans. In order to keep this project on time, the simplest way to do this is by the board taking this recommendation and approving it separately. If we're to resubmit to DSA for approval, it would cause delay of months potentially. We can always reduce the scope of the work, but anytime you add to the scope of the work, it becomes very time intensive. Given what is required for the proper removal of these tanks and the consultation from Mr. Rona and others, I believe this is a fair competitive rate in order to remove those.
I just have a couple questions. So are these, I'm just curious, are they up on that upper pad, on the cleared pad?
Yes, they are.
And I know that there was, I should say I know, I think there was a leaking water line in this area, is that right?
I believe there's a ruptured line up there that has been repaired. These were old septic reservoir tanks that the Bowles team were not aware of existed. Ernesto took me up there the first couple of weeks I was here. I determined that they should be filled with sand sooner than later. They were posing, I believe, a serious liability to the students or anybody that went up there could have fell in these 8-foot tanks and really had no way out, so.
Have they been covered?
They were covered, we backfilled them with sand, but now they have to be excavated prior to the start of 3rd phase. You have to pull them out, refill, compact the ground before they can start.
And it'll all get compacted and everything?
Yes, it will.
Yes. Those are my questions.
I have dealt with doing this before. I've built spec homes before, and in a couple of cases I had to deal with this, and I paid close to that for one residential septic, so this is an excellent price. So, you know, just for 3 holding tanks is an excellent price. Thanks for finding that.
Yeah, I really never dealt with septic.
It's a very cumbersome process, especially if they break.
That's what I thought, just seeing them, what it's gonna take to pull them out, dispose of them properly, backfill and compact, heavy equipment out there to pull them out. I felt it was reasonable.
Will they be bringing in dirt if needed for the holes, or are we using existing dirt from out?
They're gonna need to bring in additional to fill them and compact.
It's probably $1,000 in
The
dirt.
Friday letter said, and I was curious, I'm glad you reminded me, that there was dirt on site that would be used for this?
Partially, but not enough to fill them
Okay,
correctly.
but they'll bring in any additional soil?
They're responsible for that. This is a great price. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Mr. Falsgraf or Mr. Lane, you have any questions?
No, thank you. This is the kind of thing that blows up into somebody's losing some money on a job, and then all of a sudden you run across this, and it's a quick way to make up some stuff in a work order, and thank you for identifying this early, both of you. Thank you.
And I'd like to say a quick thanks to the board and the administration for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'd also like to say a special thanks to Ernesto, who's been very helpful to me in seeing things and getting a good picture of the overall district's needs.
We're lucky to have Ernesto.
Thank you. That's
Did you
great.
have a question?
Yeah, good question for the board. Apparently this wasn't in the contract for the demo of Phase 3?
Right, they didn't know.
All
it was
the
there.
We didn't know it was there. You know, there
How do you
was,
not know it's there when you have toilets there?
no, this goes back to, we weren't using them. These were abandoned back in the 90s, and they had a new system in. There were certain things, Mr. Mann, that somebody turned us in for, that's why all the fencing and stuff stopped going up. We had to stop work order from DSA, as an individual turned us in for certain nonconformities. And in the process of that, this was found in addition to some other things. This is not something that we needed.
So our bungalows in Phase 3, our old school was sitting on top of these septic tanks?
This is not Phase 3, this is Atkinson School, right?
No, it's Phase
This
3.
is phase
This is
three.
Phase, so, okay.
High school.
Well,
It's the pad up by the.
as far as that goes, how come we didn't know about that?
I had no idea when I talked to Jim Bowles early on. Jim Bowles had no idea those existed. So we took them up there physically and showed them, but they had to be filled in.
On a $24 million
Yeah.
project, we had a $10,000 miss. I can't lose too much sleep over it. It's a legitimate
But
question.
wait, you also have electric underground, you also
We
have
left that
water.
intentionally.
So those are all.
We
live.
left that intentionally for possible lights for any facilities that go up there. This was just something that kind of escaped the demo, wasn't in the contract, didn't get done, it's gotta happen.
As long as it wasn't in the contract, that's all I was worried about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a,
Did I
that's a good
answer?
price.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Call the question?
Aye.
Item 10.3 is a Board of Trustees seat vacancy. It's recommended the board enter into a discussion with regards to the upcoming Board of Trustees seat vacancy. Discussion will open at 8:46. Mr. King?
Okay, so essentially, there's three options for the board, and.
I'm sure
So.
the world should know.
Yeah, so we have a vacancy on, effective December 14th, resignation announced by Mr. Mark Distaso, which opens up a seat on the board. There's a specific timeline, there's a law that specifically states what your options are, and specifically states what the timeline is. And so, at this point, we're at a discussion point only this evening, so what I'm prepared to do is share with the board the three options, and if it pleases the board, I can read what those options are, and then the board can have discussion on those. So the first one is a provisional appointment. The board can appoint to a person to fill the seat, but must do so within 60 days of the filing of the resignation with the county superintendent, which we have done.
So when would that have to then, what is the date we have to be through that process by, 60 days? from
When did you file?
So October 13th, we filed, and so we would need to be through the process by December 14th. Well, December,
December 12th.
so December 12th.
Okay.
Are you billing us for that opinion?
Which is written right in front of me here. So, thank you, Mr. Kinsler, for writing it out for me not reading
Mary,
it.
may I say something before I forget? I read this in the Country Journal, and I just want to correct the record on this, and thank you for your reporting on this, and there was just a minor discrepancy there where Prop 415 is what caused us to have our elections on even years, right? And you just said that some board members had their term extended by 1 year. In fact, it was all board members that had their term extended by 1 year. These guys that their terms are over in 2019, their term goes to 2020. And us, that our term was over in 2017, it goes to 2018.
Noted.
So it's all of, thank you, and it's everyone, and Mr. Distaso, who has been on the board for 12 years, he wanted to just finish the 4-year term that he had. That was his reason for his resignation. He didn't want to do 5 years.
And I voted no for my own extension, so it's their fault that I'm still here after December 4th.
Thought you abstained.
Okay, so,
Oh, no.
No? Oh, okay. Next
okay,
choice.
so this is still number one. So Education Code 5091C provides that after an appointment, the registered voters of the district may circulate a petition to hold a special election to fill the vacancy. And an election will be ordered if the petition is signed by at least 1.5% of the registered voters of the district and submitted within 30 days of the appointment. If the petition is determined to be legally sufficient by the county superintendent of schools, the provisional appointment is terminated and an election is ordered. In our experience, it is uncommon but not unheard of for voters to seek a special election in these circumstances. We are aware of a recent uptick in the number of successful petitions. The likelihood of a successful petition increases in politically charged environments, in districts experiencing labor strife, and in districts where voting rights advocates are interested in changing the process for elected trustees. The second option is ordering an election.
And that's, the cost of such election would be
So if,
our responsibility, right?
correct, and the cost of doing a special election would roughly be somewhere north of $60,000. The cost of, if we went to election in 2018 for the 3 seats that were opening up, if the encumbered members went challenged, then that cost is approximately $44,000, plus the other north of $60,000, you'd be looking at roughly $120,000 on elections. So,
Okay, but
but for this, just this one, right, no,
however, in the event that we choose to appoint and it's successfully challenged, okay, there's $60,000 because it's a special election.
well, if you choose to appoint, you're not gonna have an election.
Unless it's challenged.
By 1.5%.
Right, correct, yes, that's correct.
So you can appoint, the community will have some say, 1.5% or whatever the number is, would have to object, and then we'd spend the $60,000. We can choose, this is option 2, to order an election.
Correct,
That would be $60,000.
correct.
Okay. If we ordered an election, when would that election occur?
Okay, so the board can instead order an election, but must do so within 60 days of the vacancy. Under Education Code
So we
5.
have 2 months after December to order the election, because that's when the vacancy actually occurs. It's a different timeline.
No, no.
No.
2 months after the announcement.
You have 60 days to order the election, so
Right.
before December 12th.
Okay,
Should
so
be
it's the
December
same
11th.
December 12th.
I believe December 11th is the correct date, because 60 days, we have a 31-day month in October. So the 60th day, if I'm counting correctly, would be December 11th as opposed to December 12th.
It was filed on December 13th. October has 31 days, but November only has 30.
Right?
So
That's one extra day.
it gets us to, we calculated to December 12th. At any rate, it is before your next,
But
your December board
for the
meeting.
purpose really of this discussion, I don't think we're worried so much about the day, although Larry, thank you for keeping us honest on the details.
If it's required, we should be concerned.
Okay, but I think most of us are basing our judgment on the 2-month calendar when it starts, and approximately within a day's fidelity when it ends. So if we choose to appoint, we must be through that process by December 11th to 12th. If we choose to order an election, we must make that ordering by December 11th or 12th.
And how long do we have to do the election?
When
after that?
does the election occur?
On the next regular election date available, which I
March.
think is
It's next March.
March.
Okay,
That's what I would think.
thank you. So it's $60,000 that happens in March.
So if it happens in March and we get somebody in March or April, right? The thing is, they would serve for 2 months, we'd have hiatus, summer, and then we come back and let's serve another 2.5 months before they're up for reelection. So we'd be spending that 60 grand for 4.5 months.
That's correct.
Just, and it might be worth doing it, but it's just important to point that out.
That is a good one. What was the third option, or were you done with the second one? We gave you the.
No, I didn't finish reading the second
Okay,
option.
keep going.
Okay. Under Ed Code, Section 5091B, an ordered election is held at the next established election date established under Ed Code occurring not less than 130 days after the order of the election. The relevant established election dates in the Ed Code are the second Tuesday of April in each even-numbered year, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in June each year, and the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of each year.
So April.
A June or November election date would fall outside the 130-day timeline. The special election would have to be held in March 2018. A March special election, which is unlikely to coincide with any regular election, is in your jurisdiction, would be quite costly for the district. This letter addresses the process for provisionally filling the vacancy rather than ordering an election. If the board inquiries further about the option of ordering an election, we would be pleased to provide additional information. The we is Atkinson and Andelson. So that's why I asked them to stay on.
Thanks.
So appreciate them being available for board questions. Okay, so and 3, no action. So 3 is very short, no action deferring to county superintendent. The board can have the option of taking no action, in which case the county superintendent of schools orders an election. Based on the timing of the order, this option could lead to the same results as option number 2, an election to fill the vacant seat in March 2018.
So if we don't do something, somebody makes a decision for us, and the decision they more than likely make is the one, number 2 above.
March
The
2018.
only thing the county superintendent could do is order an election.
So the question I have is this, the person, let's say we order an election, the person running for election, is this election conducted by the Register of Voters? We don't have somebody in the garage over at Acton Women's Club throwing my vote in the trash can and somebody else is over here, correct?
It's a real election.
Good,
It's just a
thank you.
special
I like how the
election.
registrar-
That's why it's
Next question,
$60,000.
I hope so. Next question I have is the person that would be
I'm sure
elected,
they'll take objection to that assertion, by the way. Great objection.
who does?
The women's club.
Okay,
Run the election.
Acton Women's Club then. I would also say it was good to me in the election, thank you. So anyway, Ed, I'm still learning to count to 10, don't
Yeah.
throw me off here. So the next question I have is, let's say no one, if you order an election and no one becomes a candidate, then what? What happens to
Then
our
we appoint.
$60,000?
Then we
Let me finish.
Well, if no one files, then there would not be an election. It then falls back into your lap to make an appointment.
Good, but I'm worried about the $60,000.
I'm not entirely sure on this point, but typically, and I think the district has probably experienced this.
We have.
You've had times when you should be having an election, you don't have more than the number of, you don't have more candidates than you have seats available, so there isn't the necessity of election. You don't incur the cost. And I'm working on the assumption, and I can check with the registrar easily, that the same thing would happen with respect to the cost.
So there would be no cost if there were no candidates?
I have been through it twice, Ken, and that's correct. That's what we've done, we've appointed both times.
So then
I'm
my
not
next,
saying what my opinion is on this case, but in the cases where we have, where that has happened twice since I've been here for 9 years, we have appointed both times. And that's where Mr. Fox came from. and
so
then
my next question then is, the person that files to become a candidate, say we have a plethora of 3 or something, and the person that's elected, that person would again have to run for the seat based on the seat that they're taking up again in November.
Yes, of course.
Yes, the person who is appointed or
Elected
elected.
would again, let's say they were elected, they would be on the ballot again.
If they wanted to run
at
again, they
their
only
own
serve out
cost.
the rest of the
Yeah.
term.
Right, if they choose to run
Yes.
again.
And I have another question for you. I've
They're
seen this.
taking Mark's position, basically.
Good. So, I have another question for you. I've seen this happen in a municipality where the current council said that they would make an appointment, but that person in taking the appointment would not become a candidate for the office in the election. Is there any legal validity to that? And I hope I'm not fired tomorrow morning for asking that question at work, but
It's not uncommon or unheard of for that to be a request or a preferred element of qualification,
okay.
but you can't require me to commit to give up my constitutional right to run for office.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Larry, any questions?
No questions, just comments when we're ready for more comments.
Well, you want to start with comments?
Okay. I realize I'm going uphill here on this board. We've discussed this time and time again. And we have, we know what Mr. Distaso's view before he's announced it, I think at the last board meeting or two. Everybody seems to want an appointment. If we were to follow Mr. Distaso's arguments and views. I feel that this is a very important elected office, this school district. And I don't think that the 4 of us, or if there's 5 of us, should decide who we're going to bring in, even temporarily, and therefore give them a step up to get to be on the board in the election in November. Because that's what will happen. People will bring in their favorites. They'll get their foot in the door. through an appointment. And the people in Acton and Aquadulce will have absolutely no say-so as to who that person would be. So I believe, you quoted the Constitution. To me, I believe the power should be for the people to elect who they want to sit on this board. Therefore, this election that would come out in March, if there was an election, would have to have the say-so of the community, because if we say we're going to have an election, and I don't put the cost of having people's rights respected in Acton and Aquadulce at a price, would be at $60,000 or $30,000, some of our other elections cost. It's the power of the people to decide this, what happens. Now, if the people of Acton and Aquadulce, in making that decision, are satisfied with nobody running in March, or one person running, and maybe it's the one that this board would love to see sitting with us up here, by them not participating in an election, they have voiced their opinion. They have made the decision as to who is going to be sitting up here. If two of them decide they both think they would be best to represent the community, then they can run in this special election. But if there's not those two or more people, this district will not pay the $60,000 for the election. Now, this is not a new and out of ordinary expense, because we didn't pay for the election for 2017. But again, I don't think it's the dollars and cents out of our pocket that should justify whether we do or do not give the power of the people to make this decision. So, my intention, my desire would be to not appoint, to set up for the election, and if nobody wants to join us up here in this volunteer, non-paid job that we are, all five of us, doing for what we believe is best for the kids, the teachers, and the community, then they will in effect have voted. And I think that's basically my point of view, why I believe in the election process as opposed to the appointment process. I believe there was a misstatement a few minutes ago. Every election has been appointment lately. That's not necessarily true. In any event, had we not had an election, Mr. Paulsgraf would not be here.
It is his fault.
It's my fault, because I made the same argument, and we got an election, and it went back and forth. The community had their say-so. Some wanted him, some didn't. And some people wanted somebody that maybe more of the board members here would have wanted him. But the people made the decision, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Ken won by 6 votes. Going back and forth during the counting of those votes. That's the power of the people to elect, and not 5 or 4 people sitting up here deciding what we want for the community. And that's what needs to be done, in my opinion. And I realize it may be a short time in between March and November. And if it was a deal where, and you can't, I understand your constitutional argument, you can't say, hey, would you come in and serve us for a short time, but we don't want you to have a step up in the general election. So would you agree not to run? Of course we can't do that. But I don't believe it's right for, if we decide to go with an appointment for some group, and I'm not naming any certain people, groups, no clubs, nothing in Acton or Aquadulce, but I don't think it's right that one group takes and gets somebody and boots them into the temporary position to give them the advantage in an election in November. And maybe it won't matter. Maybe nobody else wants this job. Who knows? We've had many elections here that there was nobody that wanted it, and so the same people, the one person got to go on having this unpaid job without going through an election. But when I ran 10 years ago, no, 12 years ago, because I didn't get elected the first time. 12 years ago, there were, I believe, 13 of us running. And that was an election, and the people were making their decision, and I came in third I think it was, or fourth for 2 or 3 positions, whichever it was. I was the one that didn't make it. And then we had an appointment. And the one that didn't get as many votes, that was part of like a little group, guess what? That person didn't get elected. But guess what happened the next time there was an appointment? There they were, and they got appointed. So, while the code says we can have an appointment, whether this board agrees to do it or not, I'm against it. I'm for the power of the people to make the decision, not the 5 of us or 4 of us, whoever. I don't know how many of us are going to make this decision, whether it's the 5 of us that are on the board now, or whether the what? I see you.
It'll be 4.
Be the 4 of us.
Mark will be gone.
No, it's a good question. I was curious myself. The person who is about to vacate does or does not vote when we make the decision on whether to appoint or elect.
Because he was there.
Excuse me, he's answering, he's the attorney. What's that?
Does not participate.
He does not participate in the vote.
Okay, so when, may I have my comments?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Oh, I was going to go, but go ahead.
Mike, what happened is, if Mark was here, if Mark said that I'm resigning at a certain date, and he happened to be here, he could be here to appoint. Because we had an appointment one time when we had 5 board members here, okay? So it can work that way.
Well, okay, first of all, so let's be very clear, because I'm not...
He's not gonna be here, though, because
Bear with me. There's 2 questions on the table, and that's why we have attorneys who know the law.
I'm just telling you what happened, Mike.
I understand, but I'm going to be extra clear.
2008, there was 5 people that voted for an appointment.
So question number 1 is, let's make sure we're clear. Is there anything in the law that precludes the person who's vacating the seat from participating in the vote of whether to appoint or elect?
The vote in the selection.
But he could participate in the vote of whether to, okay. So, just for clarity, he'll be here, we have to make this decision before December 15th, or at least I'd like to. Because, you know, things only get moldier and staler as they age. But by definition, by definition, we make the appointment after the seat is actually vacated, therefore he doesn't participate in the appointment process?
No, you're going to need to take action before the 60th day. So at that point, when you're selecting an appointee, assuming you go that way, he can't.
Oh, okay, you're right, he'll still be here, but he can't participate in the
Because then
selection.
you'd be
Correct.
picking his successor.
Sure.
Look,
Okay.
if Mark had quit on the 13th and said he was gonna be here till January, he could then participate in this. But he is quitting before we will have a chance to do this, and that's how it works, Mike.
That's not what they're saying.
I don't care what they're saying, Mike,
Okay.
because we've done this before.
Well, I'm gonna listen to the
Okay,
attorneys.
Well, I can tell, so you're saying we did it illegally in the past?
I'm
I can give you
suggesting
2,
that perhaps.
how many people were voting for you when you were coming in?
4.
Okay, how many people were voting the time before that, when Matt Ridenhour was put in?
I don't know.
5, for the
I had
same section.
1,860.
I don't know, they're telling
Okay,
us
so
that.
if Mark was saying that he's leaving here in February, and he announced on October 13th, he could be a part of this process. But he's not gonna be here, in this case, he's not gonna be here.
All right.
Okay, may I have my comments?
Sure, you wanna go next? Go
Yes,
right ahead.
unless you want to.
No,
You're welcome.
go right ahead.
I agree with Mr. Layton in regard to that in spirit, that's how elections should be held. There should always be an election. But there is a time for an appointment. It's a legal process. It's a part of the way people do get into office. In 2008, I was appointed. There was 8 other people running for that appointment. and it was a grueling process. I actually have been through 2 elections after that, none of which have been as grueling as that. I was opposed in one and I wasn't opposed in another. So I think it was harder for me to get appointed than to win an election. I have won election 4 times on the AADUSD Town Council. Twice I was opposed, twice I wasn't. So there is a time for appointment. When I was appointed in 2008, my first term, it was a difficult process. There was a local resident that was the superintendent of the Sylmore district. There was Mr. Gu, that you know, the lawyer that you know well. There were several other people that were very highly esteemed. I remember you were supporting Mr. Gu, and he deserved it. So there is a time for an appointment. Now you might say, if there's someone that's going to be in office for 3 years, I wouldn't think that's a good time to appoint. But let's make the ideal case of when an appointment will be proper. I don't know, when a guy's going to only serve 4.5 months, or the lady, whoever gets in, 4.5 months is a good time, I think, for us to say, no, we're not going to spend the $60,000 and seek to appoint. So I think in this circumstance, because they're not going to get in until March or April, we're going to be on hiatus in late May. We're not going to come back till September. Then they're going to have to announce in August whether they're going to run or not. So just mere months after they're here, they're going to have to run again. I do get Larry's point that you might be giving an unfair advantage to the person that comes in that way. And I do agree with Larry that every time possible it should be an election, and who cares how much it costs. But to me it just feels like for the few months that this person is going to be in this case, it feels right to me to save the $60,000 and go for an appointment. And that's not my final opinion. I'm open to discussing this again, and I'm open to having my mind changed. But this is just how it feels to me. I do think there's a right time to appoint. That appointment is not something, anti-American or anti-democratic or something. I don't think that at all. I don't think it's denying people of their voice. There is a right time to appoint, and this it has to be balanced with the complacency in the community, which oftentimes we don't have anybody that puts their hat in the ring for this. And it has to be balanced with the cost of the district and the amount of time, how long they're going to serve. So in this case, to me, it feels right to appoint. And Mr. Distaso, I know that's his opinion. We have to remember whether you agree with him or not, and many times I've disagreed with him, many times I've supported the positions that he supported. He has given a great deal to this community in 12 years of service, and I feel that he's entitled to his opinion if he thinks we should appoint. Now, no one should be covertly trying to put somebody in and give them a fair advantage or something, and I don't have any evidence of that going on. I don't know of any such thing whatsoever. So to me it feels right to be appointing this time, saving the money, trying to appoint someone as fast as possible, getting them in there so they can serve for the longest amount of time. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, it was 1980, sorry. Question for the attorneys. Let's say 2 of us board members vote for an election and 3 vote for an appointment. Are there ramifications later for those that voted no? Do they participate in the appointment process? If they're, okay, thank you, that's it.
Of course they do.
So,
Your comments.
yeah, my opinion on it, yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's a reason we're given this tool, and that's to use taxpayer money judiciously. And $60,000, which is a teacher in a classroom around here, is a lot of money for 4 months of service to be followed up by that election. The public has remedies if they don't like the choice we make.
Very easy remedy, 1.5%.
1.5% is not a lot of people. I really, at least nowadays, and I respect your opinion, Larry, I do. I'm not trying to take anybody's democracy away. It's about exercising a tool for fiscal responsibility. And for $60,000, and I heard you, I do, 4-month position where the voters only have to reach a 1.5% threshold to have an election to reverse our decision. And even if nobody bothers to do that, the person's got to run again in 4 months. To me, it's a no-brainer. Furthermore, perhaps in the past, there's been attempts to pack the board. There's nothing like, at least to my knowledge, there's nothing like that. We're gonna have to go out and beat the bushes to find somebody.
There was when he was running, but.
Nowadays, to even come in for an appointment. And so, the notions of that kind of, I don't know, conspiracy or something, I just don't think that's really relevant. So for me, and then there's one other point that we're not taking into account. Because of the timeline you laid out, the election doesn't happen until March, person doesn't take office till April, whereas if we appoint, they take office sometime in January. In December. Means we're running 4 months in a situation where it's possible we might have hung votes and can't make a decision.
And this happened before.
And to me, that's not even good governance.
I agree.
So for me, getting another citizen on this board in that spot as soon as possible so we can continue to function. They're still interviewed, it's a public interview, and saving a teacher's salary along the way is easy for 4 effective months of work, because you're right. Unless we're hiring superintendents, we're not even here in the summer. So that's where I am. So it sounds like probably, at least there's a consensus here. I think, are you kind of leaning towards appointment?
I wouldn't be here if there were an appointment. You may see me line up with Larry, but you got your 3 votes, so.
So what I
Take
would
it home.
recommend that you do is bring forth for the next board meeting a resolution for appointing. We'll hash it out again. It'll be the same conversation over again. Then we'll have our vote, and if 3 of us agree, there'll be an appointment. If 3 of us don't, we'll figure it out at that point. If I got that wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all.
Okay.
My recommendation to you, because there is perhaps a significant division of opinion on the subject.
Well, there always is.
We prepared for this evening a draft of what a provisional resolution would look like. We didn't include a resolution that would be for an election. And so what I would recommend to you is that you say to us, prepare the second resolution, the second option, the election
and if
option.
one doesn't pass?
And when if the election option doesn't pass, then you move to the provisional, whichever gets 3 votes is the leader.
We actually agendized both.
You agendize.
And one would hope that between the first vote and the second vote, nobody would change their mind. And so therefore, one by definition will win and one will lose.
I have 2 brief responses and 1 question for council. What would happen on these 3 options we have if we were to do nothing, and then you say it goes to the county and they order an election, and would that be ordered, would the timeliness of that be that it would be in essence not happening until November anyway?
No, it would be ordered so that you would be on the next available regular election date, which would be March of '88.
And that would all happen if we did nothing, all in time for it to be on in March. And, okay.
Yeah, so I'll just say that, to me, that's ducking. We don't let the county
I'm not
make those
suggesting
decisions for us. I know.
Now, my response to what you gentlemen have said is that, number 1, you know the thrust of why I'm saying
We do.
that it's the power of the people that should make these decisions. And there's, as you've said, another way the power of the people can exercise that power. And that is if 1.5% of them choose to go out and set up tables and try to get a 1.5% signatures.
It'd take 10 minutes.
And it would take 10 minutes. The problem with that being a logical answer, even though it is a legal path, is that number 1, I would say most of the people in Acton and AADUSD that are interested in this school district do not know that. Now, maybe they'll learn it if it's in the Country Journal or the Acton AADUSD News, but I don't think they have that knowledge that they have that power to work to get their vote. Number 2, if they do know that, And if they don't know it, but they learn it from the, and I forgot to say, Antelope Valley Press also, sorry. If they learn all that, I don't know that they would then take it upon themselves, say, we're not gonna get involved doing all that, just to go run for the office. And so that is really, in my humble opinion, not an option that gets us around the idea that the power of the people should be voting and not whoever we decide we want sitting in that empty seat. Now, my other brief response is again back to the money. Everybody wants to put this money over having the right person here doing the job to protect Acton and AADUSD residents. That money will cost exactly zero, nothing, to let the power of the people have it, because if we set up wanting to give them the opportunity to have an election, and they choose as a voter not to go ahead and run for the office, we don't pay, it costs zero, nothing. And yet we have let the power of the people run this, setting somebody in that chair.
And it's 4 more months without being able to make a decision when we split 2-2, during our busiest months of the year. So, there's a difference of opinion. Let's move on.
Let's move on. I just wanted to bring those 2 points back.
All right, and somehow,
I didn't think of that.
we will not undermine democratic processes in America with this decision.
That's what
Okay, 11.1. We're going to close the discussion at 9:22. Resolution 17-18.06, authorization to teach outside credential education code number 44263. Thank you for your help actually tonight, as well as introducing yourself.
Thank you very much.
It's recommended the board approve resolution 17-18.06, authorization to teach outside credential education code number 44263.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mr. Falsgrove. You're not doing your job. I'll do it. I second it for the record. Any discussion?
Was in your update, I don't know if there's any questions.
For the sake of the record, because Mr. Distaso was very clear, although he's not here tonight, he couldn't be here, he was concerned that we might be acting contrary to any written policies we have, and generally one should act contrary to policy.
I can speak to that, please.
Can you explain a little background on this by the teachers?
I'm going to ask Ms. Fisher to kind of clarify any technical details about the credential itself, but as far as any, there's nothing in writing, there's no policy, there's nothing formalized, nothing adopted, no past practice written that would stipulate we need to do this each year. So beyond that.
That we shouldn't do it more than 1 year.
Correct. Thank you.
The law allows us to appoint, this is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So for the technical pieces of it, I'm going to ask Ms. Fisher to come to the podium and kind of share
Yeah,
the
for
background.
public edification, just explain what we're doing here, please.
Because there's actually more public than usual.
Yeah, we have 5 people from public.
Great. So just like you said, so there's nothing written in our board policy or ARs that stipulates that a teacher can't teach outside their credential area for more than 1 year. But Ed Code reads, and it's 44263, it allows a licensed teacher with his or her consent to teach a single subject class in which he or she has 18 semester hours of coursework or 9 semester hours of upper division or graduate coursework by a resolution by the governing board each year. So they can do it year after year after year as long as the governing board approves it and they have these additional hours.
And I'm not sure who was here last week or not. We're a small district. We don't get the luxury of this teacher who only does this subject, I'll say history for the sake of something, and this teacher who only does health or something, that's a bad example, science. We have to use teachers multiple places. Now what we're talking about in this particular case, and only talking about this teacher because we approved him last year and we thought perhaps we had something in writing that we didn't want to do it more than once in a row, which we don't have in writing. This particular teacher is a scientist He teaches chemistry. That's where he's got his credential. Meets all the state criteria for extra units to teach physics. We approved him to teach physics last year. The only reason we got hung up 2 weeks ago was because Mr. Distaso recalled perhaps an objective, but not a policy. And so we're not acting outside our policy. Now, once you get past all that fancy stuff, besides that he's educated in it, he's done it before, it's completely illegal, we just have to say we recognize it. What's the alternative? Not to have physics? So there's also a practical application to all this. So I think I've kind of given my opinion on the matter.
Mr. President?
Discussion?
Is there a reason I'm not clear on this, is there a reason that for the other teacher,
It was only their first year.
no, Lundquist has done it for 7 years.
Was your question, Mr. Porter, that there wasn't an objection to the other one?
Why wasn't there objection on the part of Mr. Distaso to the teacher who's done this for 7 years in a row?
Because it was an elective. He stated that
Okay.
because it was physics, he felt strongly about that. The other was video production, and he didn't have a strong objection.
I misspoke.
Video production is very important too.
It is. All of our electives are, and so
I think we're good.
Mr. Fox is right on point. In a small district, this is a common issue, and so you often do supplemental or provisional credential approvals that are legal, and we're very much in compliance.
Are you happy with the way our current policies on this issue?
Yes.
And it gives you enough flexibility to run your staff the way you like?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm good with it.
My question is this, has there been, considering this has been going on for a couple of years, has there been a significant problem with students doing well in that class and being hampered in going to college because of it?
I couldn't speak to that piece,
You
because
can't, he's only taught it 1 year prior. He's relatively new.
So how'd the kids do last year?
Mr. DeVoe's not here, and I can't speak to that. I don't have the
I
data
need to
on that.
look
We
at
can,
their
we'd be happy to bring it back to the board.
No, I don't see that. I'm just saying, I think it would be knowledge to at least somebody in the district, I would hope, to say that I had 50% of my physics students not pass the class. That would be my only concern. I have a daughter, just so you know, I have a daughter in this gentleman's class right now, and she doesn't seem to be doing poorly. Of course, she's a falls graph, but that said, she's doing fine.
She took after a while.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready whenever you are, Mr. President.
I'm always, well, certain.
Okay.
No, certainly.
If you want me to fill out a card, well, but I just,
You probably need to do we need to fill out a card? Fill out a card, but you can speak and fill
I'll
out.
speak in
Before you take
I'll do both
speakers,
these
did I
things.
give my view
Also,
also?
I didn't realize you had.
Oh, I do here.
No, he
very
thought you were
much.
pointing to him.
Oh, no. My situation on this is that you've got to look at the reason for this. This code that allows us to have somebody teach outside their credential has a major purpose, and that's competency. One word, competency. Do we want somebody not competent teaching our kids? And the code prevents it. It says they have to do, on any subject that they don't have their credential, they have to do the specific numbers, hours of coursework. In other words, be sure they're competent. Now, if the ed code says that's good enough, who are we to say they're not competent? Well, I'll tell you. We've had this going on with other teachers for the reason that you said. We're a small district. We need to be able to have this ability to have different subjects taught by the same teacher.
Flexibility.
But it all goes back to favorites. If somebody doesn't like a teacher, for any reason whatsoever, well, we'll throw them out because they don't have a credential. And don't tell me it doesn't happen. That's politics. And that's why we can talk about all the other teachers that you guys have brought up and the times that we've had it, and the times it's failed, or the times that teacher's been unpopular, so let's boot him out. The ed code sets the requirements, and this particular teacher meets them. So there's no reason to say, you can't be here because our policy that doesn't exist says you can't, or because one or two of us choose to have somebody that's more popular with us. Sort of like goes back to the power of the people to decide, not just this board. So, my vote, of course, is going to be yes.
Mr. Wesley, you wanted to speak?
Well, yes, a couple of things just to be clear, you know,
State your name for a record, please.
Alan Wessel.
Thank you, it keeps me honest.
Yeah, no problem. A couple of just real quick points. Number one is, you know, I have my own company, and even though that somebody may be qualified, you know, on paper for a job, they can't do the job, and that's a problem, and I get rid of them and I move on to somebody else. But to the point of your question, I have two kids that, I've had this teacher, I believe, last year and this year. Two of them in two different classes this year. Some disturbing things that come back from both kids, one in physics and one in chemistry, and again, last year. I'm just concerned is that he may have the knowledge, and he may have the credentials to do this, but the kids aren't learning, and that's a problem. We have to spend some time with our kids to make sure that this is, you know, that they at least try to get there. And it's not just our kids, you know, we have a lot of kids over our house a lot, and they talk, and this is a subject. But when I hear about the teacher in physics that's teaching the class by showing videos, YouTube videos of other teachers teaching, I'm just not feeling the best way. So my point is that, so to answer his question, I don't think they're learning well. However, for your guys' decision, you have nobody else.
So, if you, I feel poor teachers not here,
Make sure you don't mention the name.
But so having said all this, if you're ever concerned about the quality of education you receive, talk to the teacher, then talk to the principal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's always there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, I'm gonna call this to question. Call the question. Aye.
I think the last comment I have is the comments that are being made.
I'm trying to get a vote.
Hang on. The last comment I have is I believe it was the superintendent's recommendation to move ahead with this, correct?
Correct.
Right now, and I think that you're well capable of looking at staff and take care of business that needs to be taken care of.
Correct.
That said, I'll vote yes.
Ken, just to clarify, it says right here, it is recommended the board approve resolution.
He's just getting orderly. Let him do it. 4, 0, 1. Okay. Thank you. Item 11.2, monthly stipend for additional duties and responsibilities. Director Principal Lynn David. It's recommended the board approve a monthly stipend in the amount of $1,100 for Director Principal Lynn David when she is directed to perform additional duties in fiscal services not to extend beyond March 31st, 2018.
Moved. Second.
Mr. King, do you have any?
No, again, just I'm so appreciative of the efforts I've seen in just a few days, and I'm looking forward to the board's support of the recommendation and her continued work with us on a very crucial time as we look towards first interim and other important benchmarks financially speaking.
Again, for the public edification, this is for Ms. David stepping in the place of our CFO while he's on leave.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you for doing that.
Anybody else going to?
I have comments.
Mr. Porter, or Mr. Buzzer, go ahead.
First, Lynn David, I have some experience with you as a constituent prior to me being up here. We had a very lonely LCAP meeting in which you were able to explain to a lay person what the budget looks like and what the dashboard looks like and what the yellow and orange lights look like and what all these confusing fund balances mean in terms of gauging educational outputs in the community. And I felt very comfortable in that there was competence there. So before I ever sat up here, I had a great deal of competence in your financial ability. I'm going to be as good as I can about this, and Lynn, please don't take this to mean anything to do with you. I'll close this out at the end. First, I think the CFO or CBO position in this district pays $1.50. I think that I'm pretty close there. Early on with the charter legal challenges, we had somebody saying we don't provide enough oversight, and so some of that's financial. So we hired a consultant to do $50,000 worth of work, and that was on call as needed. Since then, we've been climbing up with a second company that has 4 or 5 in some partnership or something. And this is, again, somebody to help our financial division on top of the 50, so we're at 2 right now. And now we're seeing those numbers jump up from $100 to $200 to $300 a year. So the finance oversight in this district is now costing us somewhere around $500,000 a year. Our charter income, which I never was able to really put my finger on this year when I first started wanting to know what the numbers are, the realistic, real-time, what's happening. We're seeing back in the audit results that come back, and I'm not going to go too far down that path, but the auditor is telling the legislature, hey, if you're going to monitor the oversight, then you would do this, this, and this. And I think the major point there is that you are on top of your numbers in real time and what your charter numbers mean. So I've got $500,000 out on $4 million worth of income, and in my world, I don't need to spend 8 cents to have somebody tell me how to spend $1. So that said, I'm looking at a point where somebody can tell me why it's costing us $500,000 to oversee the finances of this district. And if your competence that you've shown me in putting the LCAP together and being able to explain to me, I understand municipal budgets and operational budgets, and I'm not informed as to educational budgets, so that's a problem for me. But I'm hoping that this stipend that we're going to give you, I have no doubt that you'll make that up in the first couple months, and hopefully, if you have the opportunity, you'll bring us additional savings down the road and give us some insight. I know that you're involved in education of people getting into public administration at the collegiate level. I'm sure some of them go on to brilliant careers. So I hope you can use some of that information in your time here to get these numbers under control and be able to tell me what's going on. So you have my full vote of confidence. Thank you.
Larry, do you have any questions?
No, thank you. I'm very happy that she's risen to the occasion, and I appreciate you doing this thing. Thank you.
I'll simply say that a school district can't run without a CFO, and right now our CFO is out sick. And we need to backfill that spot, and Miss David's shown an acumen for it. She's got some background in as a CEO, I believe. And so we're making the best use of the folks we have, and we're providing some compensation for stepping up into a higher pay grade role. It's obvious to me that is reasonable because you can't not know what your numbers are. I'll only say that, and there's nothing about what Mr. Falsgraf said that I disagree with. I'll just point out, because I don't want folks to get the wrong impression, if you can find more cost-effective ways to do financial oversight, terrific. That'll be icing on the cake. What Mr. Falsgraf is referring to is $500,000 to run the finances here as well as at 15 charter schools. And so that's part of our responsibility. That's why we collect oversight fees. So, you know, it's our obligation to monitor them. If we can find a more cost-effective way of doing it, that's awesome. But that's what we're referring to.
Mr. President, may I, real quick here?
Sure.
I'll be quick for interest of time, but I know that we spent over $300,000 in consulting fees last year for
Financial charter review.
exactly, and
other, I mean, it's other because it turns out they help us with our budgets as well.
and our audit and all that. And it's just, I would like to at some point, you can have a cost and benefit analysis of if that's the right way of doing it. You know, if you feel that, or if you feel we can hire an additional person or do it differently. Obviously in conjunction with Mr. King, I would like to at some point at the right time to hear about that, some kind of presentation. We've done some very wonderful presentations in the past.
That's an awesome assignment, not necessarily for Ms. David, but between now and March, but for Superintendent King and the CFO when he returns.
Well, the Superintendent King is who pointed out to us that we actually spent that much on that. And I know we've approved all of it, but it's just, I never kind of quite
It's good. We should look for more cost-effective ways.
And the second thing would be at some point I'd like to really clearly know, and I'm sure this is possible, that this is the X amount of dollars that we're bringing in from the charters, And I'm sure that there's, you can work with Ms. Fisher and the superintendent and our legal team and the CFO when he does return. And that this is the X amount that we bring in from charters. This is actually how much we spent on the charters. This is how much is left over, because at a certain point, I feel we have a fiduciary obligation to our constituents. If it's actually a loss leader, we need to, you know, compartmentalize that accordingly. So, thank you.
I hate to add, I just don't like stuff hanging too much. We don't account that way currently. It's hard to, you know, what percentage of the time does he do it, or somebody else work on it, or Ms. Fisher work on it?
Direct
Or
costs.
other roles. But I can assure you that there wouldn't be Chromebooks in the classrooms, a remodel of the school, a repainting and a remodel of the high desert gym,
And the reserves that we have.
and the reserves that we have. If it was costing us money to help with the charter school, or ability to give some modest pay benefit increases. All right.
Just to be clear, I'm looking for a CBO that does not need $300,000 a year worth of consultant report. That's support, that's what I'm looking for.
All right. I'm gonna call this to question.
Aye.
Call the question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Barry,
Aye.
okay, that's a 4-0-1.
Calendar.
Calendar, we have a meeting November 9th and a meeting November 14th. Close will be at 6:30. Did I say something wrong?
Oh, you know,
Future agenda.
Oh, did I skip something? Oh, I did.
That's my fault.
I'm sorry.
My fault.
12.0, let me rewind, future agenda items, CAST results, local indicators, budget study.
So, and I have a comment on that.
Yep.
So, I'd like the board to entertain 2 dates for a budget study session, November 14th or November 15th.
What are the days of the
Those
week?
are a Tuesday and a Wednesday,
So today's already November 14th, and
and the 15th.
I'll make myself available on that day.
Yeah, let us know. So you're kicking off the sessions earlier in the year, and that's becoming standard practice.
we start those at 6 o'clock instead of 6:30. That's what we've done in the past.
Okay, well, we can stick with that, sure.
I would prefer the 15th over the 14th,
Okay.
me personally.
Is that a Tuesday?
The
No, that's a
15th is a Wednesday.
Wednesdays are typically good for me.
I might have the town council meeting on that day.
On Wednesday, the 15th?
No, it'll be Wednesday the 8th. So I'm available either day.
So it sounds like from everyone here, what I heard is the preferred day
Wednesday.
is the Wednesday, because all the rest of us are open for both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
And we should also probably add the future agenda items, the trustee
Oh, yes.
vacancy issue, because that has to be done apparently on the.
Oh,
dot
of course,
To be
of
timely.
course, of course. We can add that. I
And
mean,
can
it's
we add
gonna
the-
be next meeting.
Yeah.
Can we add the driveway also to the future agenda items?
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
VHS driveway, that's all I have to say.
All right. November 9th is our next board meeting at 7:30 PM. December, I misread that. December 14th, after that, we actually get Thanksgiving off. And that's why there's only one meeting in November. However, it will be augmented by the budget study that we just referred.
Correct, and just one other comment, if the board, depending which way you vote, election versus appointment, should you go with the appointment route, there would be another special board meeting in November.
Sure. Okay, closed session 14.0. We did take action in closed session. The board, with Mark Distaso's absence, we voted 3 aye, 1 nay, 1 abstention to accept, I'm sorry, 1 absence. 3 ayes, 1 nay, Mr. Layton, and 1 absence, Mr. Distaso. We voted in 2 cases for 2 different students to accept the recommendation of the superintendent for a stipulated expulsion.
Correct.
No, wait, I want to put my comment on the record as I discussed. Shall I do that now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. As you heard Mr. Fox say, I was the dissenting vote that voted no, and I'd like to make it very clear why my vote was no. You may recall at the last board meeting, or the board meeting before that, I believe it was Mr. Porter brought it up, and he brought it up, I think again earlier this evening, that it's very, his opinion on deciding disciplinary matters for students. And at the last time we had the board meeting, 1 or 2 times ago, if not both, I expressed that I think one of the most important duties I have on this board is to see that disciplinary action is treated very fairly, and that we don't have something that's a so-called zero tolerance policy, that there's no such thing recognized by the Ed Code, that it's zero tolerance, that they each have to be considered on their facts and apply the law to the facts and come out with what is a fair and just decision. In reference to the 2 student matters that was voted upon this evening, I got an inch of discovery, an inch of different reports, single-spaced, that I was expected to analyze and figure out what is best for that student based on the time I'm in the closed session doing other things, instead of having adequate time to prepare and decide what is right and what is wrong. I cannot vote on what's right and wrong under those conditions. And I have said this for the last 10 years on this board. If a kid, nothing to do with these 2 cases, if a kid is accused of throwing his boot at a girl on the gym field, or whether he's accused of arson for lighting a little match on a piece of toilet paper, or if he's accused of any other thing you can think of, I think there should be a fair and just decision, and it should be, if we're going to approve it and vote on it as a board, we should be able to have time to analyze it. And I voted no on both of these incidents, not on the merits of anything that the students were accused of, or admitted to, or any paperwork whatsoever, because I had nothing to base a decision on. And that's why I voted no. So I just want the community to know that on these 2 cases, that's the reason for my no vote. It's nothing to do with what's right, what's wrong. It's because I didn't get any paperwork until it was too late for me to make a just decision, and I just won't vote that way.
Mr. President, can I make a comment? Please. I want the public to understand kind of the remedy to that. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Layton, and they're just. Coming in from another district where I was in charge of pupil services matters, like expulsions and student severe disciplinary action that's pending, I have a practice that I was accustomed to, which I implemented tonight, and Mr. Layton's point is well taken. So you have to guard students' rights to confidentiality and privacy to the utmost, per the law. So, per my experience and from advice from legal counsel, what I've done in the past on employee matters, and I think we can apply the same thing here, is that we allow a window of time for board members to have access to those files so that they can have ample opportunity, as much as they like, within the confines of my office, to have a private place set up for them to review the materials on their own for as long as they'd like to. And I think that that's what we'll do moving forward. And your point's well taken, I completely understand it.
And I appreciate very much that new plan to make it possible.
Absolutely.
Mr. Layton, I respect your opinion on this matter, and I feel that there is a great benefit to there's a great benefit to the board of having someone with your moral compass and your respect for the First Amendment, your respect for privacy, your respect for the fair way of doing things.
Due process.
Due process, exactly. And I do want to clarify, I'm speaking for myself now here, just not for any other board member. that the way that I saw this, and the way I believe this was our ratification of an agreement reached. The board is not doing this. This is a ratification of an agreement reached between the parents and the superintendent of both of these children. And
Be very, very careful because of their rights to confidentiality.
you got it. And I wouldn't be one to go and say, no, the parents do not have the right to do this with the superintendent. This was a very serious case, and it affected us in several ways that I will not go into redundant elaboration of. I've already explained the effect this had on the student body and our attendance and several different things. And I think that this met the criteria, that even if I wish I had received some of this stuff earlier, which I don't wish that because I was involved in the process, I had a chance to look at everything, and I was involved in it. So I didn't feel that it was a case where I didn't get the stuff in time. However, if it had been that I hadn't received this stuff in time, the case is so serious that it wouldn't meet the threshold where I would, out of principle, for the procedures, vote in a manner that would, in my opinion, compromise the safety of the student body. I'll leave it at that.
My comment is this, we have to be very careful here. I only wish I could compliment personally everyone who was involved in this solution, everyone.
All right, so there's the report out. And at this point in time, we're up to item 15.1, adjournment at 9:52.
I'll make a move.
Okay, Ed Porter moves.
Second.
Ken Fallscraft seconded. Call the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's a 4-0-1. Good night.